My name is Kate Radburn and I'm a winemaker, and we're here sitting in the vineyards at Gimlet Road for CJ Pask Winery, which is the winery where I'm winemaker. And we're just getting ready at the moment to prepare for the 2011 vintage. And I apologise while we're speaking if you hear some banging in the background. It's the bird bangers that we're using just to keep the birds away from the crop. I absolutely love Chardonnay. To me, it's an absolutely classic variety, and from a winemaker, from a winemaking point of view, it just offers us such a range of styles that we can make, so it's beautifully versatile. And by that I mean we can make a crisp, unoaked style, and we can then, absolute opposite end of the spectrum, do a big full barrel, more rich and complex style. So it offers great challenges, but it has a natural grace and beauty. Ripe Chardonnay, when grown well, has this beautiful balance between intense fruit and lovely acidity. And acidity really helps in giving a wine definition. And what I love about ripe, pure, balanced Chardonnay is these wines make themselves. And I really mean that with all honesty. You get it right in the vineyard, and then you see this beautiful, pure expression in the glass once the wine's been made. And in Hawke's Bay, Chardonnay's early ripening, for us that's really important because it means we can consistently get it ripe even in a cooler year. One of the clones of Chardonnay that we grow here in the vineyard is called the Mendoza clone, and that relates back to where it came from. But what's unique about this bunch of grapes when you see it on the vine is that it has what we call hen and chicken berries. The French call it mirandage, but what it means is it has normal sized berries, but interdispersed throughout the whole bunch of these tiny, tiny little berries that are no bigger than my little fingernail. And it's those really small berries that gives us these incredibly intense concentrated flavours. And it's a clone of Chardonnay that I particularly enjoy making wine from. And we have delivered these beautiful sort of lemon and grapefruit fruit characters from Mendoza Chardonnay, and I think to me that's classic Hawke's Bay Chardonnay. So here we are, these are Chardonnay vines, and it's probably just interesting just to make a couple of comments of what we're trying to achieve here. When we're growing grapes, we call it canopy management. We like to see the fruit exposed, and that's for two reasons. One, it maximises the sunlight so that we know that the grapes will get ripe. Two, if we need to spray for any reason, we know that we're going to get good solid penetration because, you know, the canopy's not all locked up with leaves. So for here I look at this and I see a nice open canopy. This clone is the Mendoza clone that I mentioned earlier that has these hen and chicken berries. And if you look at these grapes, I mean, I just think that's a classic bunch. You see the normal sized berries, and then we see these tiny, tiny little, what we call the chicken berries, which are interspersed in the bunch, and we get these beautiful, beautiful concentrated flavours from those little berries. This bunch is just beginning to soften up and ripen. It's going through veraison, and we would typically harvest these grapes in about 3 weeks' time. I believe Chardonnay's grown through all the winemaking regions in the world pretty much, and sort of the slight, perhaps other than very cool areas. And certainly the same applies in New Zealand. Most of the wine growing regions in New Zealand make Chardonnay, and most of them make absolutely beautiful wine, albeit slightly different in style. I think the North Island Chardonnays just tend to be possibly a little bit more, can be slightly heavier and more tropical and rich in style, and the wines from the South Island a bit more racy and fine-tuned, purely based on we're slightly warmer here and cooler down south. But I see, for me, I mean, I typically describe Hawke's Bay Chardonnays as having this, and I love them, my mouth's watering, lemony, limey, sort of grapefruit characters, and then this beautiful pure acidity. Just in general terms, when we look at wine, the first thing we like to look at is the colour. And the colour does a couple of things. It certainly gives an indication of the age of the wine. and also its brightness. If it looked dull, you'd immediately think that there was something wrong. And I'd say in general terms, most wines that we all drink should, the colour should be absolutely acceptable. And then a really important part of wine is its aroma. And that's one of the reasons we have a glass shaped like this that comes slightly in at the top. So we swirl the glass, which just slightly warms up the wine, and it just helps release a lot of the aromatic components. So we have a good sniff, and it's one of the reasons I'm very pleased to have a big nose. It works well. But we really look to see what are the aromas that come off the wine, the characteristics. Are they floral? Are they fragrant? Are they savoury, earthy, etc.? And then by far the biggest part is the taste. And I'm going to show you what I do when I put the wine in my mouth, and it sounds a little funny, but we put a bit of wine in the mouth and then we draw a little bit of air through the wine, and that's called aspirating it. And again, it's a bit like slightly warming it and releasing aromas. When we draw air through the wine, it really helps us taste the flavours. Well, the Chardonnay I'm tasting now is a barrel fermented Chardonnay, fermented in one of these oak casks, and that produces a very distinctive style of Chardonnay. What we'd expect from Chardonnay fermented in barrel is that it has a lovely golden colour, and if I look at the colour on this, that's certainly the case. When I look at the aroma on this wine, I see some lovely, complex, sort of sweet French oak influences. It's slightly biscuity, which again I'd also expect from a barrel fermented Chardonnay, but without a doubt the absolute background of the aroma is this beautiful sort of citrus fruit characters, which I think is very typically Hawke's Bay Chardonnay. I see the palate of this wine. It's lovely and rich and full. There's a yeastiness that comes through, because when we ferment the Chardonnay in the barrel, we then hold the finished wine in contact with the yeast for a period of time, and that helps fill out and give a bit of weight and texture to the palate, and I really see those characteristics come through. And then it just has this beautiful, clean, dry finish which the acidity provides. It just works beautifully. And again, those citrus notes, and those, I see a slight minerality come through in this wine. I think it's lovely Chardonnay. I've just described the Chardonnay that I've tasted, which is that big full barrel fermented style. But one of the absolute beauties of this variety is that it makes such a range, from the more sort of fruit-driven, if you like, slightly more simple style, all the way through to these complex barrel fermented wines. So please, if you've got the time and your whatever the selection is on the day, have a look at a couple of different wines, because they should be beautiful. We have an in-flight wine selection process that we conduct twice a year, and what happens there is that every winery in the country is invited to present their wines, and I'm one of the wine consultants, and I judge along with Jim Harray and John Belsham. All the wines submitted will be taste blind, and what we're looking for is the best examples of each variety. And then one of the other criteria that we really like to put forward is when people are travelling on Air New Zealand, for us it's a journey of discovery. We have a national vineyard that starts at the top of the North Island and goes all the way through down to Central Otago. So it's really important to us that we have a selection of both varieties and also the regions that we cover as a national vineyard. I think currently the wines that we have selected in flight, I think we have, and this is again what I love about what we do, I think we have a Chardonnay from Marlborough, we have one from Martinborough, there's one from Waipara, and also Nelson. So absolutely a range of regions as well. So for frequent travellers, because not every wine is available on every flight, each flight it's purely a selection of. If you are a frequent traveller, you really have the ability to explore regionality, the different styles of Chardonnay that come from the different regions. And as a wine selector for Air New Zealand, that is really what we want to see people doing. Be a bit bold, experience some different wine styles. The flight attendants would be absolutely delighted either to help guide in that process or make subtle suggestions. I like to think people will, particularly if it's a long haul flight, you've got the time to have a taste and select and see what you like yourself with each dish.